All right, this is the ethics and impacts of orphanage voluntourism in Kenya. First off, what is voluntourism? Voluntourism is a type of tourism that is centered around visiting another area to perform charity work, and it combines aspects of volunteering and tourism as the volunteers are also on vacation while they are there. So today we're going to talk about Kenyan orphanages and voluntourism going on there. So first, the origins of the orphanages in Kenya. There's been political unrest that has been happening for the last 40 to 50 years since Kenya's independence in 1963. And because of that and the HIV/AIDS epidemic and just lack of proper infrastructure, there are many children who are left orphaned or in need of some form of social aid. Because of the government's political unrest, there are many registered, but there are many also unregistered orphanages. The orphanage business is relatively unregulated. Abuse and starvation is common. Orphanages will often take donations and use that as profit instead of using it to care for the children. And a fact many people don't know is that 80% of orphans have a living parent or a guardian that would take care of them if they could. But either cannot or wish for their child to have a better life and choose for them to live in these orphanages, although they don't know the extent of the abuse going on in there. Orphanages will often employ people called child finders who go into poor, impoverished communities, and they look for children that will garner sympathy from volunteers. They especially look for malnourished and children with disabilities. And they convince the parents to let them take the child by promising education, food, and shelter, although these promises are never fulfilled. Because of this, it is human trafficking. So dignity and respect in these orphanages. Because of the ongoing abuse here, there's a lot of children who deal with traumatic effects. Volunteers who come have no training on how to work with children with trauma, and because of this and the constant coming of going of people, these children are left traumatized each time a volunteer comes, and they'll come into their life and play with them and have fun, and then the very next day they leave. There's also no requirements for background checks. Because of that, abuse is common. There's a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of physical abuse, and these children are left with long-term attachment disorders from both of these factors. Children are also trained in these orphanages. They are told to sing and dance and perform to garner more donations from the volunteers. But they rarely ever see any of this money. Volunteers will come and they'll notice children who need glasses who don't have them, so they'll offer to pay for these services, but that money just goes straight back into the people running the orphanages. There's also an ethical issue here, which is visiting these orphanages is very it equates children to zoo animals, something to be looked at, to be visited. It doesn't really acknowledge the human experience and how traumatizing this can be for children in this type of care. So, what are the recommendations for best travel practices? Ultimately, the best thing you can do is not travel. Again, most people who are coming to volunteer are just kind-hearted people who don't know any better, but they don't have the skills to deal with, children who have experienced traumatic events, who are experiencing poverty. So if you're not capable of helping the children in the way that they need, the best thing you can do is to not help. Orphanage voluntourism also only incentivizes orphanages to continue human trafficking, it does nothing to address the larger problem, which is ultimately poverty and inequity. The best thing for these children to do is to be in the care of their parents and their guardians. Orphanages really should only be the last resort for children who truly have nobody, and unfortunately, that's just not who are in the orphanages today. So what we would like to see instead is social structures being set up that allow children to stay in the home and support parents as they navigate poverty. And another thing that we can do as travelers is to support Kenya's legal efforts. They're working to deinstitutionalize orphanages, which is, again, just to send children back into their communities, to their culture, where they should be. And they would like to set up some social systems too and social services that could help children in these instances. One thing we can do monetarily is we can donate to reputable organizations with family reunification and social change as a goal. So we can have good impacts and directly help these communities, just not in the way that we typically see right now. And these are my references.